Divorce is never easy, especially during the holidays. However, it can be made a little easier if you have the right attorney. And today we welcome attorney Sara Turner to the Charleston Women Podcast.
This is Charleston Women Podcast, where you can meet like-minded, strong, independent, professional, and inspiring local women. This is Charleston Women Podcast.
And now we are thrilled to welcome to the Charleston Women Podcast attorney Sara Turner from the law office of Sara Turner. Sara, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm sure, as an attorney, you get questions all the time. But today you kind of wanted to dig in a little bit into custody agreements, correct?
Yes.
So
and holidays as well. Yes.
Over the holidays, for sure. So let's just start off with, what type of law do you practice? What do you do?
I practice family law, which includes custody cases, divorces, really all aspects of a custody case, child support, visitation, and who's making the decisions, and then all aspects of a divorce case, which includes custody on occasion.
Okay, so as we head into the holidays, is this a time of year that you see is obviously the toughest, but do you get the most frequent phone calls from clients?
I do get a lot of phone calls, especially when there is not an agreement that has been put together yet, or there may not be a court order and parties are going through the process of initially separating, and they are unsure how to handle that first holiday if they have not been to court yet.
Okay. Now, I know every case is different and you can't issue blanket advice, if you will, but do you have some best practices for someone who is going through a divorce or thinking of going through divorce of, what kind of things they should get in that agreement?
Absolutely. So I think the first step is identifying what your normal is. And every family has a different type of schedule, and they might celebrate holidays a little bit differently than what a standard holiday schedule is. And when I say a standard holiday schedule, I mean that there is a typical schedule that a judge would give during a hearing to parties that may not align exactly with what your family situation is. So, for example, if you have family that lives out of town and you know that you're going to be traveling over the holidays, you may need a schedule that aligns a little bit differently to allow for extra travel time, because no one wants to be stuck in an airport on Christmas Day worried about getting home by 2 p.m. in order to make a custodial exchange. So the first step is identifying really what your family does over the holidays. Do you stay in town or do you travel? And then the second part is figuring out what is really important to you, but also taking into account what is really important to your child, because these holiday schedules are created really to look at what is going to be in the best interest of the child. And that is celebrating with both parents, being able to have traditions from both families brought in. And even though, the holidays are very important to adults as well, it's really taking into account what makes sense for the child and where they can have time with both parents.
Okay, so I know you referenced the 2 p.m. exchange. Is that typical what judges usually give couples?
Yes, especially if you're local, you both are local, and parents don't live on the East Coast and West Coast and trying to make an exchange. You really look at Christmas being divided into two parts, with the first part of Christmas being from the time a child's released from school, and concluding on Christmas Day at 2 p.m. and the second part being from 2 p.m. on Christmas Day until the child returns to school. And of course, you alternate and rotate each year so that one parent doesn't always have Christmas Eve and Christmas morning. But it's really, like I said, making that determination as to maybe Christmas Eve for your family is the most important part of the whole holiday, and coming up with a plan that addresses that.
In 1996, it was Southern Women to Women magazine. Now it's Charleston Women magazine. Charleston Women is all about strong, capable, confident, hardworking, nurturing, determined, dedicated, and inspiring women. Our readers are business owners, entrepreneurs, mothers, sisters, wives, and grandmothers. Pick up your copy of Charleston Women magazine at Charleston area Harris Teeters and Food Lions. Charleston Women Magazine. We are Charleston Women.
You're listening to the Charleston Women Podcast.
Is there an ideal schedule that does not include the 2 p.m., exchange that you see a lot of your clients do that seems to work for both parties?
Some parents look at the exchange on Christmas Day being entirely too chaotic. You've got a morning that, opening up presents and maybe a lot of sugar, and that 2 o'clock, child might be coming down from the whole morning and it may not be a productive exchange time. Mm-hmm. So I do see where parents are doing more of a December 27th exchange just to allow some time to actually, if you want to change up your schedule in the future, mm-hmm. If you want to start traveling, or maybe if you have more children and you look at what that other person who might be in your life would be wanting to do, you don't want to be stuck at this December 25th, 2 p.m. schedule.
Right. When you come up with those rules, if you will, at the time of divorce, is that set in stone forever, or can people go back to you and renegotiate? Or do you find that couples, as the kids get older, they become more agreeable and things just naturally shift and adjust?
I think it really depends upon the parties. Mm-hmm. So my favorite question is, can we just have an agreement to resolve everything? And my answer is, well, an agreement takes two parties to come to an agreement. Mm-hmm. So if you're dealing with someone who is cordial, who's willing to work with you, mm-hmm. then of course, by agreement, you can always make some minor tweaks along the way. And most agreements have that language in there to say, should the parties agree in writing, mm-hmm. that you can make that change. But if you've got a situation where you're never going to get along, I think mm-hmm. it's really important to make sure that your agreement takes into consideration not just what you have going on right now, mm-hmm. but what you might have going on in the future, and to mm-hmm. not be short-sighted of you having a different life in the future with somebody mm-hmm. else.
Do you ever come across people that maybe didn't go through this process in the beginning? They weren't as detailed as what day at what time, and it becomes a major issue later.
Yes, all the time.
Yeah.
I get some agreements where parties entered into their own agreement. Either they were pro se or they just went before the judge and said, this is what we've come up with. Mm-hmm. And I've had clients come to me and say, this really overly broad, vague agreement does not work. Mm-hmm. And we have entered into supplemental agreements that identify when a holiday start time is, when it concludes, all of those aspects that were not addressed initially.
Right. What advice do you have for someone who, might be considering divorce or at least talking about it? I guess my first question is, should they wait until after the holidays? And then after that, at what point do they need to see you before they make this life-changing decision?
So I will say right after the new year, I get a lot of phone calls. Someone has decided this is their last holiday season sleeping on a couch at their in-laws' house and they can't do it anymore. And so, if you're already at this point and you're approaching the holidays, it is difficult to make such a major decision with a lot of other factors going on. Mm-hmm. So if you are several months out from getting separated and you want to come up with a plan to address the holidays and you've got a new place that you can easily move into, then, absolutely make a phone call and start talking with an attorney about the separation process, because maybe it's easier for a person to make a shift in their life over the holidays because their work is slower during that time. And so it really is about the person as to what makes sense at that moment.
Right. Sarah, what made you want to get into law?
I took my first law class when I was in college, and it was the first class that I really felt passionate about, and caught myself raising my hand multiple times during the class and just was immediately drawn to the law. And I interned at a law firm prior to applying to law school. Mm-hmm. And then I worked all through law school. So I knew that this was for me.
Okay. And, it's obviously not an easy job. You're seeing people not at their finest, at the most difficult moment in their life frequently. But out of all that messiness for you, what do you find to be the most rewarding in your job?
I think someone coming to me after this process and feeling like they have peace and that they can be a better friend, a better partner in the future, or a better parent because they have released this tension that was not working and they're able to overcome that. And seeing in someone's face from day one to the very end, that's rewarding to me.
Right. Do you tell people when they first come to you, like, I promise it will get better? I'm sure you probably say that a lot. Like, I know it seems, terrible right now, but I got you and things are going to improve.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of hurdles along the way as far as, the shock of I'm going through with this, and then getting through some of hearings or discovery or mediation. But there's little hurdles along the way that are there to have you reach the finish line.
Right. My final question for you, and I like to ask most of our guests this, and it's completely unrelated to the law, but I like asking successful women such as yourself, how do you start your day? I think it's kind of indicative of how things go for the rest of the day. So do you start with a workout, a routine, yoga, reading? What do you do?
I absolutely agree. I first get a cup of coffee and I walk my dog around the neighborhood, and then I'll do a workout. I feel like I have 25 minutes where I walk her and listen to a podcast, listen to something that's uplifting, and starting my day that way really makes the rest of the day a lot better. I can definitely tell when I have not started my day that way.
I agree. I love that. Are you a really early riser? Like, what time do you have to start taking meetings? What time are you in the office?
I'm in the office by 9, but I'm usually inundated with little things around the house. I'm still renovating my house. So I've got a whole host of things to get done before I come into the office, but I do wake up early, and I think that kind of having that much time before you walk into an office is also important because you want to have your mind set and not distracted.
Right. Sara, thank you so much for your time. How do people get a hold of you?
They can email me or call my office at 843-277-2431. Or they can also visit my website, saraturnerlaw.com.
All right. And I also see social media is the same, Sara Turner Law as well. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so.
No. Well, thank you. It has been such a pleasure. You have a wonderful holiday season. And, thank you for all you do helping families.
Thank you. Do the same.
All right. This has been the Charleston Women Podcast with Sara Turner Law.
Thanks for spending time with Charleston Women Podcast. Please like us and follow us on whatever platform you're using to access Charleston Women Podcast.